June 25th, 2009, Michael Jackson is dead. The king of pop, who sold more than 400 million records, who built Neverland, who owned half the Sony ATV catalog, died $500 million in debt. He had a will, he had a trust, and his family has been in probate court for 17 years, with his own daughter in court just the other day. This is how the most famous estate in American history became the most cautionary tale in American legal history.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good job, Alexis. So this is exciting. Little crime going on.
Yep.
Little intense.
Very much so. And then we talk about somebody very special in our lives.
Yeah.
Who really is sorely missed.
Sorely. June 25th, 2009. Before I tell you where I was that day, I need to tell you where I came from. I grew up around Michael Jackson. As a child growing up in Hollywood in the 80s, I was on the set of Hollywood Center Studios on Las Palmas and Hollywood Boulevard, back when it was known as Studio Center Studios. Michael Jackson was a part of that world, not as a distant celebrity I watched on television, as a presence, a reality, the same zip code as my childhood. I remember when he caught fire filming the Pepsi commercial in 1984. I remember the Elephant Man's bones, his attempt to purchase the remains of Joseph Merrick, which became one of the defining stories of his public eccentricity. I remember the hyperbaric chamber, the glove, all of it, because Hollywood in the 80s was a small world, and Michael Jackson was at the center of it. I tell you this because this episode is not research for me, it's memory. I remember exactly where I was that day. I remember exactly what I was doing. I remember the phone call, because June 25th, 2009 was not just the day the world lost Michael Jackson. It was the day after I met the man who would become the love of my life. His name was Christopher Nassif, and he was not just someone who worked in Hollywood. He was one of the architects of it. In 1983, fresh out of USC, Chris founded C&A and Associates at the age of 22. He became the youngest person in history to establish a top-tier talent agency. While most people his age were still figuring out their careers, Chris was already negotiating deals that shaped the industry. He built C&A to top 10 agency stylists while still in his 20s. In 2000, he merged C&A with Premier Artist Talent Agency to form Diverse Talent Group, DTG, which became one of the top agencies worldwide. His client list tells you everything about who he was. Luke Perry, Chris negotiated his Beverly Hills 90210 deal. Austin Butler, Chrissy Metz, James Vanderbeek, Ricky Martin, Sofia Vergara. These were not accidents. These were careers that Chris saw coming before the rest of the industry did. That was his gift, spotting talent before the world knew what it was looking at. Later in his career, Chris transitioned from agent to producer. As CEO of Diverse Media Group, he moved into packaging and producing television and film. He held a specific creative joint venture with Stan Lee's POW Entertainment, tasked with identifying and securing high-profile celebrity and athlete talent for a new superhero brands. He formed Insurrection Entertainment and had a first-look deal with Cinedigm in 2018. He was not just adjacent to the entertainment industry at its highest level. He was inside of it, building it, protecting it, and watching with full clarity when the people who built it were being taken apart by the very system that was supposed to protect them. Chris understood something that most people in that world never fully grasped: the difference between generating wealth and owning it, the difference between building a legacy and protecting one. He saw the inside men who were working to dismantle legacies of the people he knew. And he knew better than almost anyone that the judicial war was always waiting for everyone, no matter how much they had built. When he passed away in 2022, the world lost one of the most extraordinary connectors in the entertainment industry has ever known. And this show is the conversation he knew always needed to happen. He grew up in Los Feliz in Hollywood. He knew the world that Michael Jackson moved through, not from the outside looking in, but as someone who built that world alongside the people who defined it. When he called me that morning, June 25th, Michael Jackson was all anyone was talking about. And Chris and I talked about him for hours. We didn't separate until the day I lost him in 2022 when he passed away in my arms. Through Chris, I also met Aphrodite Jones, the true crime journalist and documentary filmmaker who was deep in the Michael Jackson world at that time. Aphrodite was working on a documentary examining the case from a perspective the mainstream media had not fully presented. Chris was connected to her work, and so through this one extraordinary moment in time, the death of Michael Jackson, I found myself at the intersection of a love story, a true crime investigation, a documentary, and a legal battle that is still playing out in Los Angeles courtrooms today. 17 years later. I have thought about this many times. The fact that the day Michael Jackson died was the day my life with Chris truly began. I have always said that Michael Jackson brought us together. And so this episode, this case, is not abstract for me. It is not just a legal story. It is a story woven into the most significant relationship of my life. And what happened to Michael Jackson's estate? What is still happening in a Los Angeles courtroom right now, today, in 2026, is the most important warning I can give to every woman listening to this show. Michael Jackson died with a will. He died with a trust. He was represented by some of the most sophisticated entertainment attorneys in the world. He had accountants, business managers, and advisors surrounding him for his entire adult life. And his family has been in probate court for 17 years. 17 years. His daughter was in court this week. This is the episode where we explain exactly how that happened and exactly what it means for you.
I'm Alexis Nassif, and in 45 years of California real estate and estate work, I have watched families lose what they built because they made the same mistake Michael Jackson made. The mistake is not having a trust. The mistake is not funding it. It's an empty thing.
I am Natalie Francine. This is Wealth, War, and Real Estate, Estate Interrupted, a special series on celebrity estates gone wrong and what every case teaches us about our own. For women, by women.
And men, too. I always have to say that.
Include the men because they can learn something from it as
always.
well, right?
For sure. So Chris was my brother also.
Oh, Chris was your brother, Alexis Nassif.
That's right, Chris Nassif. He was one of the most talented men that I know. He was dynamic.
He was
absolutely dynamic. He was putting deals together before he was even...
When he was working at the Greek theater, introducing people to each other. True crime moment. Michael Jackson earned more money in a single year than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. In 1996 alone, the year of his story tour, he generated over $100 million. Over his career, he sold more than 400 million records worldwide. Thriller remains the best-selling album in music history. And when the paramedics arrived at his rented home in Holmby Hills mansion on the morning of June 25th, 2009, the man who generated all of that was $500 million in debt. How does someone earn hundreds of millions of dollars and die $500 million in debt? The answer is a lesson in the difference between generating wealth and owning wealth. Michael Jackson's financial story begins with Sony ATV music publishing catalog. In 1985, he purchased ATV Music Publishing for $47.5 million, a deal that gave him ownership of the Beatles catalog among thousands of other songs. That single acquisition became the most valuable asset he owned, worth hundreds of millions by the time of his death.
But Jackson had borrowed heavily against that catalog. He had a line of credit with Bank of America secured by his share of the Sony ATV catalog. He had loans from Sony. He had personal debt from the costs of operating Neverland, which ran an estimated $5 million per year, from the cost of his lifestyle, his legal battles, and his business venture. The Neverland Ranch alone tells the whole story. A 2,700-acre estate with a private zoo, an amusement park, a movie theater, and a full staff. It cost more to operate than most small countries spent in infrastructure, and it was mortgaged to the hilt.
When he died, the assets were extraordinary. The Sony ATV catalog, the MyJack music catalog containing his own compositions, the Neverland property, hundreds of millions in intellectual property, but the liabilities were equally extraordinary. $500 million owed to banks, to Sony, to creditors of every kind. True crime moment. The executors of Michael Jackson's estate, John Branca and John McClain, inherited what can only be described as a financial disaster wrapped in a cultural treasure. $500 million in debt, assets that could not be liquidated without destroying the very value that made them worth holding. And a family, a mother, children, siblings, waiting to understand what any of it meant for them.
Now let's talk about the legal structure, because this is where the lesson lives. Michael Jackson had a will dated July 7, 2002. It named John Branca and John McClain as executors. It left his estate to the Michael Jackson Family Trust. It specified that his mother, Catherine, would receive financial support during her lifetime, and that his children would inherit through the trust. On paper, that is a complete estate plan. A will directing assets to a trust, named executors, specified beneficiaries. This should have worked.
The problem, the catastrophic 17-year problem, is what Alexis just said. The will directed assets to the Michael Jackson Family Trust, but the trust was not funded.
The trust existed as a document, but the assets, the Sony ATV catalog interest, the MyJack catalog, the real property, the bank accounts, were not titled in the name of the trust. They were held in Michael Jackson's name personally. When he died, those assets did not transfer to the trust automatically. They went through probate, a public court process in Los Angeles where anyone with a claim or curiosity could access the filings.
The war. A trust is not a magic document. It is a legal container, and a container only holds what you put into it. Michael Jackson created the container, the Michael Jackson Family Trust, but he never transferred his assets into it. His will directed those assets to the trust at death, but assets held personally go through probate before they can reach the trust. That probate process, which should have been a formality, became a 17-year public legal battle that cost his estate tens of millions of dollars and exposed every financial detail of his life and death to the public record. True crime moment. In the weeks following Michael Jackson's death, the Los Angeles Superior Court became the arena for one of the most complex probate proceedings in California history. The estate owed $500 million. The assets were worth potentially billions, but only if managed correctly over time with extraordinary skill. The The executors had to simultaneously manage crushing debt, protect irreplaceable intellectual property, and navigate the griefs and demands of a family that had depended on Michael Jackson financially for decades.
The first battle was the will itself. Katherine Jackson, Michael's mother, challenged the validity of the will initially. She claimed she had no knowledge of it and questioned whether it was properly executed. That challenge was ultimately unsuccessful. The will was admitted to probate, but it was the beginning of a pattern that defined this estate for 17 years. Every major decision made by the executors has been challenged. Every accounting has been disputed. Every significant transaction has generated a legal response from some member of that family.
And here is what Alexis and I need you to understand about why this matters beyond celebrity gossip. The legal fees in this estate are staggering. The executors have received, by Paris Jackson's own court filings, over $148 million in compensation since Michael's death. Law firms have received millions in fees. The estate has spent millions fighting challenges from family members and millions more defending intellectual property from every direction. That is money that should have gone to his children. That is money that the unfunded trust made available to be consumed by the process. I like our new cards, by the way.
I do too. They're great. It's got a
True
little
crime moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Here is the part of the Michael Jackson story that nobody tells completely. Despite 17 years of chaos, despite the debt, despite the family battles, despite the legal costs, the executors have done something extraordinary. They have transformed a $500 million liability into a $3 billion enterprise. The Sony ATV catalog later sold to Sony for $750. The Broadway musical MJ, the Las Vegas residency deals, the licensing empire, the biopic releasing next month. By any financial measure, the Michael Jackson estate is one of the most successfully managed celebrity estates in history.
Which makes the ongoing litigation even more instructive, because here is the question that every estate battle eventually asks. If the executors have done their job this well, why is the family still fighting?
The answer is transparency. The answer is communication. The answer is that a trust, properly funded and properly administered, creates a framework for accountability that probate proceedings does not. Paris Jackson has not been asking for the money to stop. She has not been asking for the accounting. She wants to see where the money has gone. That is not an unreasonable request from a beneficiary of an estate that has earned $3 billion in her name.
And on March 24th, 2026, a couple of weeks ago, a Los Angeles judge ruled in her favor. The estate must disclose 4 years of financial documents from 2022 to 25. Paris Jackson won the right to see where the money went 17 years after her father died. She is now 27 years old. She has spent more than half of her life in family defined by a legal battle.
The war. The Michael Jackson estate teaches two lessons simultaneously. First, the unfunded trust is a catastrophic mistake that turns a private family matter into a 17-year public court proceeding. Second, even an extraordinarily well-managed estate, one that generates $3 billion, cannot escape the consequences of the original structural failure. The process created by the unfunded trust has consumed tens of millions of dollars, exposed every detail of the family's finances, and placed Michael Jackson's own daughter in an adversarial position with the people managing her inheritance. A funded trust does not prevent all conflict, but it prevents this kind of conflict.
I do love the cards. And they have a QR code in the back, which is really good.
Yeah, so we can be found anywhere.
Absolutely.
Scan it. We have to make sure they work, though. I made sure they work.
Let me be specific about what went wrong, because specific is what protects you.
Failure 1. The trust was not funded. The most important action in any trust-based estate plan is transferring your assets into the trust, not creating the document. Transferring the assets. Michael Jackson's trust existed, his assets did not.
Failure 2, no ongoing estate plan maintenance. An estate plan is not a one-time document. It requires ongoing attention as assets change, as debt is acquired, as new intellectual property is created, as the financial picture shifts. The trust structure must be updated. Jackson's financial picture changed dramatically in the years before his death. The trust structure did not keep pace.
Failure 3, no transparency framework for the family. The executors had extraordinary authority. The family had no established mechanism for accountability. A properly structured trust includes provisions for regular accounting to beneficiaries, not because the executors are presumed to be dishonest, but because transparency prevents the suspicion that breeds litigation.
Failure 4, no family communication. Michael Jackson's estate plan, whatever its legal structure, was not communicated to his family while he was alive. His mother didn't know the details of the will. His children were too young to understand. There was no family meeting, no legacy letter, no framework for how the family would navigate the financial reality of his estate. Every one of these failures is preventable. Every single one of them.
It's true. The actions that would have changed everything for the Jackson family, and that will change everything for yours. Fund your trust. Every asset that matters, your home, your investment accounts, your intellectual property, your business interest, must be titled in the name of your trust, not directed to it in your will. Titled in it now, while you are alive and able to sign the documents.
Review your trust annually, every year. Sit down with your estate planning attorney and review what you own, whether it is in the trust. Every new asset, every significant change, annual review is not excessive. It is just the minimum.
Build the accountability framework in. Require annual accountings from your trustee to your beneficiaries. Name an independent co-trustee for large, complex estates. Give your family the right to information, not because you distrust your chosen trustee, but because information prevents conflict.
Have the family meeting while you're alive, while you are clear. Tell them what you have, how it is structured, and why. The conversation is uncomfortable. The litigation it prevents is catastrophic.
Definitely.
Yeah. Still have to do mine, finish it.
You'll get there. You'll get it done.
Eventually.
Someday.
Maybe
While
today.
you're still alive.
Well, and clear.
And clear. And talking.
Yes. And I talk
and
plenty.
able to articulate. I want to come back to where I started, June 25th, 2009, the day Michael Jackson died, the day my life with Chris began. Chris understood what it meant to move through a world where enormous wealth and enormous vulnerability existed side by side. He understood in ways I only came to understand later that having money and protecting money are completely different skills. That the people who build wealth and the people who structure wealth are not always the same people. Michael Jackson built wealth that the world had never seen. He did not structure it, and his family is still paying for the price. Still paying the price.
The lesson of the Michael Jackson estate is not about celebrity. It is not about fame. It is not about the billions of dollars. It's about a trust document that was never funded, an empty box that the family has been fighting over for 17 years because the assets that should have been inside it never made it. Do not let that be your story.
Next episode, we go back inside the Michael Jackson estate, but this time we follow Paris, a 27-year-old woman who has spent more than half of her life fighting for transparency about the wealth her father left her. Episode 2, the Civil War.
The 20-year question for this week. If you died tonight and the assets that matter most to you titled in your trust, not directed to it, not mentioned in your will, titled in it. And if the answer is no, what are you doing tomorrow morning to change that?
I am Natalie Francine. This is Estate Interrupted.
I'm Alexis Nassif. This is Wealth, War, and Real Estate. For women, by women.
Thank you so much. See you next episode.
This was a hard one, talking about Chris.